Centerville Town Council's virtual forum, hosted by the League of Women Voters, presented to you tonight by Queen Anne's County Television. Tonight, you're going to get to meet all the candidates running for town council, and you're going to get a chance to ask your own questions. How's that going to work? Well, tonight, we're on Facebook, and your questions can be asked right in Facebook. So just type it into a message, and we're going to see it. Oh, did we hear us the whole time? Okay. So just type your message into our comments section, and we're going to make sure that your questions are read to our candidates, and they're going to get a chance to answer them hopefully tonight. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Patricia Jameson, the League of Women Voters Queen Anne's County President.
Thank you. Welcome and thank you for participating in this virtual pre-election candidate forum for the vacancies on the Centerville Town Council, which is sponsored by the League of Women Voters of Queen Anne's County in collaboration with Queen Anne's County TV. My name is Patricia Jameson, and I am the current president of the League of Women Voters of Queen Anne's County. The League of Women Voters is 100 years old this year and is a nonpartisan organization whose membership is open to anyone at least 16 years of age. The founders of the League of Women Voters believed that a nonpartisan league could provide education to the public to ensure the success of democracy. Our league, which has been active since 2004, supports the belief that democracy works best when voters make informed decisions, and forums like this are one way to do that. To learn more about Queen Anne County's league, go to our website, lwvqac.org, where you will find a video produced in collaboration with Queen Anne's County TV entitled The Vote for Women, that overviews the history behind the founding of the National League, as well as provides information about our league. Thanks to Mary Campbell, who chaired our forum committee and made certain that candidates received invitations and information and that the press was informed of this event. Mary will be the timer for tonight's virtual forum. A special thanks to Queen Anne's County TV for producing this event and for all who are participating by Facebook or by live streaming. Thanks especially to you, the candidates, for your willingness to serve our community and for being part of our virtual forum this evening. At this time, I would like to thank and turn things over to Mrs. Barbara Sharkey, our league's former president and current treasurer, who will introduce the candidates and moderate tonight's forum. Barbara?
Okay, thank you, Pat. So I'm going to start with telling you the format for the Centerville Town Council forum for tonight. 9 candidates are running, 4 will be elected. So the format, because we have 9 candidates, which is wonderful, but each candidate will only have 1 minute to answer each question. We're going to start with candidates introducing themselves, and we're going to do it alphabetically, and the first candidate for the introduction will be the beginning of the alphabet, which is Mr. Beecraft. The next question, starting with Miss Shelby Brown, will be answering a question that they all have been given by the league beforehand. And then we will go on to questions that have been submitted by the public, either by email or live on Facebook. If the question is being directed to a specific candidate, that candidate will be the first one to answer, but then everyone else will have an opportunity to answer the question also. If the question is not directed to a specific individual, we will continue in the alphabetical order, and then Bob Hardy will be answering the first question, and then we will follow through where everyone will get an opportunity to answer the question. So we anticipate that the questions will end by about 7:45, and then we will conclude, starting with the end of the alphabet, which Mr. Dan Worth will do a summary of whatever he wants to say for 1 minute, and we will go in reverse order for that. Mary Campbell, did you mention? Mary Campbell's the timer, and she will be assisting with keeping everybody on track, not letting anybody go over a minute. So let's get started. We're going to start with Mr. Dale Beecraft, and will you please introduce yourself, Mr. Beecraft?
My name is Dale Beecraft, as was stated. I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters and QACTV for sponsoring this event and everybody that's tuning in. I have a bachelor's degree from Randolph-Macon College in psychology. I did my graduate work at Virginia Commonwealth University in educational administration and physical education, and I also studied pastoral ministry at Southern Baptist Theological Seminary. I moved to Queen Anne County in 2004 and to Centerville in 2007. I spent 45 years working in education, coaching, teaching, and pastoral ministry. I am married to my wife, Lori, for 32 years. We have 5 adult children, all graduates of Queen Anne County High School. I take it a great privilege to have the opportunity to serve the people of Centerville, so I hope I get your vote.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Shelby Brown.
Hi, I'm Shelby Brown. I grew up on Kent Island and I moved to Centerville in 2018. I live here with my husband Ash and our chocolate lab Palmer and look forward to raising our family here one day. I went to Marymount University in Arlington and I work locally as an event planner and have had the privilege of working with a lot of local organizations like Hospice, Compass Regional Hospice, and Haven Ministries. I also am a member of the Parks Advisory Board, which I thoroughly enjoy, and I look forward to the opportunity to be on our town council.
Great. Mr. Hardy.
Hi, good evening. Thank you, League of Women Voters and QACTV and all my fellow candidates. I am the P4I candidate, professional, personable, proactive, persistent with integrity. I will listen, learn, and serve all the members, all the citizens of the town of Centerville with fiscal responsibility and improved communications. I've been a resident of Centerville for 12 years, QAC for 30 years. I've been active in my community, the county, the town. I am married to Debbie Hardy, a retired teacher, librarian. She currently works at the QAC library. I am a retired major in the U.S. Army Reserves. I have 3 college degrees. One of them is in engineering administration from George Washington University. I had a 35-year career in engineering with the Navy, and I will use that experience to be the best for Queen Anne's County. Thank you.
Mr. Jeff Keel.
Hi, I want to thank Queen Anne's County TV and the League of Women Voters. My name is Jeff Keel. I've lived in Centerville for 20 years. I grew up on Kent Island, graduating from Queen Anne's County High School. I am currently a EMT with the Queen Anne's County Department of Emergency Services since 2013. Prior to that, I worked for Queen Anne's County DPW as a construction inspector since 2001. Before that, I was construction inspector for the State Highway Administration. I've been a volunteer for Google Fire Company for the last 15 years. I'm married, have 3 stepchildren, 6 grandchildren, and 2 great-grandchildren, and I look forward to serving the citizens or the residents of Centerville. Thank you.
Mr. Klein.
Thank you. I'm Steve Klein. I live with my wife, Kim, and my 2 children, Alex and Emily, in Centerville Heights, where we've been for about a decade. I've got 20 years of experience in public policy on Capitol Hill. I'm proud to say that I'm an Eagle Scout from Troop 427 in Edgemere, Maryland. I'm a lifelong Marylander, in fact, a 7th generation Marylander. And I am the current chairman of the Centerville Board of Zoning Appeals and was also back in 2011 on the Queen Anne's County Budget Task Force. I hope to earn your vote. Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Lane.
My name is Ann Lane, and I'm a lifelong resident of Queen Anne's County and have lived in Centerville since 1980. My parents and my son all reside in Centerville. I have an associate's degree from Chesapeake College and have worked primarily with individuals with special needs, and I've been driving a school bus in Queen Anne's and Kent County for approximately 12 years. I want to thank you all for putting this together, and I look forward to serving the residents of Centerville.
Thank you. Mr. McNeil?
Thank you, Barbara. I'm going to use my minute to do some thank yous, okay? First of all, many thanks to the League of Women Voters. 2020 is a very strange year. It's a very strange year for campaigning. We have to do things differently, and thanks for forums like this, we can better inform the public so they can make good voting choices. So thank you for holding this event. Special thanks for the gang at QACTV 7. This is the second time they've interviewed us, all the candidates. And again, people watching it live, and they'll repeat it. It's a great community asset because you can't knock on the door and shake hands anymore. I usually put my door hang and run like heck, all right? The last thing, I'd like to thank all the candidates. I mean, I've lived in this county, this town 41 years. This is the largest number of candidates we've ever had run. Now, obviously, there's also 4 seats. And that's a real plus for democracy. And all these people, look, it takes a lot of guts to get out there in front, and put your name out there and say, I'm going to run for something I believe in stuff. So all those thank yous to the League of Women Voters, QAC7, and my fellow colleagues.
Thank you. Mr. Ziegler?
Thank you, Barbara. I'm George Ziegler, lived in Centerville since 1992. My wife Deb and I moved up here from Charlotte when I took a new job with a company called Procter & Gamble Pharmaceuticals. Been here ever since, raised a son and a daughter here. Both went to Queen Anne's County schools. My son followed in his dad's footstep. He is the 7th generation of United States Marines in our family, going back to 1842. So we're quite proud of our legacy with that. My daughter is at Y College, finishing up her nursing degree. I have done this before. I have served on the council, served the people of Centerville. There's some things that I started that I would like to see to come to fruition, and I plan on doing that as well. Thank you.
Mr. Worth?
Hi, my name's Dan Worth. I live in the historic district of town, the old part of town, as some people call it. And I've been in town for 20 years and became actively involved in town politics soon after I moved here. And most recently, I was involved with getting the Council of 5 through the petition process and the vote, and actually had to get the courts involved in order to make sure the town got through the process this year so we could have an election with this number of candidates.
Great, thank you. Okay, let's move on to the prepared question that you've each received, and we're going to start with Ms. Shelby Brown. And the question is, on your priority list, what are the top 2 actions that the town council should focus on accomplishing? Shelby.
So on my priority list for town council, one of the top 2 priorities would be to increase communication. I think it's of the utmost importance that our residents know what's going on with our town council, they know what's going on with our local businesses, and I think that we need to increase communication via our website, our email, possibly a newspaper or a circular that goes out, but the residents need to know what's going on, and a form of communication needs to be established. The other action that I think would be very important would be, I'd like to lead grant writing campaigns to help our economic and educational development throughout our town without affecting our taxpayers. And I think that would be very important.
Great, thank you. Mr. Hardy.
Well, my 2 interests are, again, I agree with Shelby about improved communications with fiscal responsibility. Hey, one morning I woke up, my water bill went up 40%. Huh? Communications needs to be improved. Things can't be done in the back room. I just can't believe it, but we're there. Economic development. We want to maintain the family-oriented values in a small town feel of Centerville. But I want to invigorate the town of Centerville. Through appropriate planning, foresight, and teamwork, implement development to create new business opportunities, increase our business tax base, increase job opportunities for all our citizens, including our young families and our children that are graduating from high school and Chesapeake College. So communications and economic development. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeff Keel.
My number one on the priority list would be the future of the town's infrastructure, which is aging. It's going to be a huge task, but I would like to see a plan in place for the future projects without raising rates. I'm interested in the current fees that we pay for certain services, like the wastewater treatment plant and the water system. I would like to also evaluate the fees and compare them with other towns at the same comparable to the town of Centerville. The second one is we need growth, both residential and commercial, to bring revenue to the town. However, it's a fine line between growth and being able to maintain the historical values. I would appreciate the opportunity to work with the town council members and brainstorm ideas on how to accomplish this. With a diverse group of folks, I believe this can be done.
Thank you. Mr. Steve Klein.
Thank you. So there are two farms in Centerville that could bring hundreds of new homes to town. I think as the next town council, these questions are going to have to be asked and tackled. And we moved here because of the quality of life. My 7-year-old kids can ride their bikes and we don't have to much worry about them. And as we think about questions of growth, those are the questions that I want to answer. The second issue is related to the first one, and that's our debt. The town has $17 million in debt on the books. That's 3 times the general budget of the town, the annual budget. And it's directly related to the first issue. We have to make sure our growth is planned well and is paying for itself. Current town residents shouldn't have to foot the bill for tomorrow's town residents, and I believe that strongly. Those are my 2 things. Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Ann Lane.
So as I had said before in the introduction that the QATV was kind enough to do, I call it housekeeping. I'd like to see those capital projects that have been deferred, little housekeeping and cleaned up. As Jeff mentioned, the infrastructure on the website, it's listed, I think it's 9 streets in Centerville that the infrastructure and then the paving still need to be done. I would like to see that finished and the other deferred capital projects before we move on. As far as growth, I am also one who very deliberate and very conscientious with growth coming into the town. And I had noticed in Shelby's first intro, and she mentioned again the grant writing, and that's something that I look forward to. So it's not all coming from our residents' wallets.
Thank you. Fred McNeil.
Thanks again, Barbara. Number 1 on my list is the most important thing we can do is maintain the quality of life we have here in Centerville. It's a delightful place to raise children. I'm raising grandchildren. It's a great place to play and work. Our number 1 goal has to be, let's keep this wonderful small town atmosphere. Now, there's going to be growth. It's going to have to be smart growth. But let's maintain what we have, this wonderful place to live. Most people give their right arm to live in a place like Centerville. My number 2 one, and pushing up to number 1, Shelby, I think you hit a real important point. Everyone I talk to says there's a communications problem. The town has a great website. It puts out an email that tells you what's going on. When I went and voted last Saturday, and I told all my friends I voted, all of them said, we didn't know anything about it. So I think one of the things we have to work on is better communicating to the citizens what we're doing, what we hope to do, and as we work together, communicate better. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Mr. George Ziegler.
Well, I think going around the whole table here, the biggest thing is the growth. How either to grow or how not to grow our community so that we can all achieve what we're looking for, which is a quality of life for our families. To do that, because of the comprehensive plan that came out in 2009, if a new development wants to come here, they have to pay for their own sewer and water, which means any addition to the sewer and water infrastructure will be paid by the developers. The inflow, what the stats that I've been looking at, houses are selling for the asking price, and some of the houses are currently selling for over the asking house price. So we are getting the growth here, we're getting the turnover, and sooner or later, we're gonna have to figure out the best way that we can bring smart growth to Centerville, as we've tried to do in the past with the comprehensive plan. The new one's coming out. Our population is gonna grow to about 7,000 to 8,000 people under the new census. Dan, is that number where you're at? And when you add that to the number of people that come to the county seat to go to work every day, and I've got to stop, thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Danworth?
Yes, as several candidates have mentioned, we need to improve communication, and it's not just the town communicating with the citizens, but being able to listen to what the citizens want and not have to anyway, there are issues that it takes several tries to get the town council to take action because they don't really believe that a bunch of citizens want something done. But the bigger problem is the water bills and the taxes, as other candidates have mentioned. And I know was several concerns about the spending on the Commerce and Liberty projects and how that increased our debt. But the problem began like 20 years ago, really, when we decided to expand the wastewater treatment plant in the first place. And we need to figure out what went wrong during that process before we do it again.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Begraft?
Number one on my list is to address the water and sewer increases. I think we have to live with what's been done right now. There's not much we can do about that, but there needs to be a plan to stabilize the increases over the next 5 to 10 years. So we need to look at that very carefully to address a plan to stabilize the rates. The other thing is, and it was already addressed, but do we want to grow? If we want to grow, then we have to have a plan in place, 5-year, 10-year, where do we want to be, invest in the infrastructure that's needed to grow, and then come up with a comprehensive plan to attract the people and the businesses we want.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to take this off because I can speak better. So now we start the questions from the public, and some of these may have already been touched on, but they're more detailed now. So we're going to start with Ms. Bob Hardy, and the first question is, as a retired economist, I noticed that none of the candidates in their online interviews addressed the fact that due to business shutdown, tax revenue will be reduced in the coming year. The two ways to boost revenue are to raise taxes or expand the tax base, bearing in mind that expanding residential housing actually costs more than it generates. Which of these do you support, and specifically, what incentives would you support to attract new business, keeping in mind that businesses pay Queen Anne's County tax as well as Centerville town tax when they relocate here?
Excellent question.
Mr. Hardy.
In fact, I talked about economic development, bringing together planning, foresight, teamwork to do it. And nobody mentioned 2015 Economic Development Plan and marketing analysis. It's been on the books. It's on the shelf. Nothing's been done. It addresses improving the tax base, improving the family orientation of Centerville. What we need to do is attract business. We need to work with the current business owners. Case in point, the creamery. In the pandemic, they revised their business model. They accepted that they couldn't have people dine in. So what you need is a flexibility. You need to improve and work with our business community. They've been talking to me and telling me past administrations did not listen to them.
Thank you. Mr. Keel, would you like to answer the question?
No, I'm good.
You don't want to, you're passing?
Well, Mr. Hardy, I'm thinking we need to work with our current business owners to see what they can do to bring in more money into the town. And we need to attract new business. So we have to offer like incentives to bring new businesses to town. That's all.
Okay, thank you.
The question was about current revenue levels, right?
I'll repeat it. Two ways to boost revenue are to raise taxes or expand the tax base, bearing in mind that expanding residential housing actually costs more than it generates. And which do you support, and to attract new businesses coming in, recognizing that they're going to be paying taxes in Queen Anne's County and Centerville?
In terms of the current current year revenues, certainly COVID-19 is going to be a tremendous pressure on municipal governments. Difficult for me to say what that looks like for Centerville because the budget really doesn't look into some of those things. And that's got to be fixed in the way Centerville budgets what's called the out year. What are things going to look like? The other piece to that is not just on the revenue side, it's on the cost side, the expenditure side. And in my view, everything's got to be on the table. What is the town of Centerville spending money on? And what can be cut from that budget, if anything? Because I do not think we can go back to taxpayers and say, we need more. I would be pretty well opposed to that. In terms of bringing businesses to town, you've got to treat them all equitably. They all have to be welcomed to town in the same kind of way. And I don't think it's up to the town council to pick winners and losers.
Thank you. Ms. Ann Klein? I'm Lane, I'm sorry. Pardon me.
You guys got married, you didn't tell us.
That's my mom's name.
Yeah, viable business, and clearly there's been some breakdown there. And I think with, as the other candidates had mentioned before, communication, seeing what has worked in other towns that are comparable to Centerville, and find out what we need to do to get them here and support them in the center of town.
Thank you. Mr. McNeil?
Barbara, this is tragically a national problem. The pandemic is going to cause us economic woes for years. It's going to cause our state, our federal government, and unfortunately it's going to cause Centerville. But there's always a bright light. And by golly, the biggest thing as I talk to people, what people talk about in this town more than any other issue? The burning issue is, we've got an ice cream parlor and isn't it fun? People line up. And the most talked about issue in this town is not water or sewer, it is what's the best ice cream at the ice cream parlor. Chocolate mint's good, by the way.
Okay.
My suggestion is, let's go to the existing businesses and say, folks, tell us, you're the businessmen and the businesswomen, what we can do to create an atmosphere to assist you. First, the existing businesses, okay, to help boost revenues, and how can we attract new businesses? It doesn't make any sense for a retired educator to tell the business community what to do, okay? Big problem, we're gonna have to deal with it, but it's a national problem.
Thank you. Mr. Ziegler?
We have an economic development group here that frankly hasn't been pulling their share of the load. We need to fix that. And we need to fix that by putting somebody on the council who's business driven, who knows how to get people to get things done. The other thing that we have done that I did, and I hate to use the word I, Bob.
That's okay.
I established a grant program for facades replacements within this community when I was on the council. Sometime this week, there's going to be a $6,000 check given to Shucks for all the work that they have done. And these used to be matching grants up to $15,000. Now they're free. I mean, they're grants, but there's no matching funds required. So those are the kind of things that we need to identify and help and get that information to the business owners so that they can take advantage of this dollars. And I have more of that as we move forward on that.
Good, thank you. Mr. Worth?
Yes, it's not just tax revenue, but the bulk. I've noticed that I pay actually more in my water and sewer bill than I do in taxes to the town. And I'm sure many other property owners, if you look carefully at that, you would find that true as well. And we need to look more carefully at how we run our water and sewer system. It's we're leaning more towards being a public utility. That seems to be the main focus of the town rather than a town government. That's where most of our revenue comes from, where our expenses lie. We need to look more carefully at that. A lot of it's driven by the debt service, but the infrastructure improvements should have saved us money, and best I can tell, they have not.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Beecraft?
Well, in the post-COVID era, if we can call it post-COVID, everything has changed. It's a new normal. So I agree with Mr. Klein that everything needs to be on the table at this point. We don't know what things are really actually going to look like when the dust settles. We need to look at maybe offering incentives for businesses to come in. We need to carefully analyze the budget to see what the town needs, talk to all the stakeholders in the town to see what the budget needs to look like. And one possibility is that the tax set off from the county, maybe some of that revenue could go into the town coffers and the rest go back to the people. That's one possibility. But all options need to be on the table, and the council they do a great job of analyzing the budget and assessing the needs and coming up with the best solution for everybody.
Thank you. Ms. Brown?
I think a lot of our candidates hit the nail on the head. I think it's of the utmost importance that we speak with the current business owners and find out, how we can improve communication and streamline processes for their businesses as town council. I think it is we need to look into grants that we can get for the infrastructure and to improve the businesses that have been empty on Commerce and Pennsylvania and throughout our town, and work really hard to fill those spots and have a booming historic district.
Thank you. Okay, so the next question, and we're going to start with Mr. Keel. Over the past 3 years, how many town council meetings have you attended in person, and how many times have you made public comment? Mr. Keel.
I've probably attended 5 to 10, and public comment, I'm a listener, so I sat back and listened to what people say, and that's what got me involved to run for town council, because I listen to people. So, and then that's when I started attending, is when we went through the whole debacle of the last election. So that's what got me involved, and that wanted to make sure everything was on the straight and narrow, so.
Thank you. Mr. Klein.
Pre-COVID, 3 to 4, and made public comment at all of them. Since COVID, I've watched all of them.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Lane.
Will you read the question again?
Over the past 3 years, how many town council meetings have you attended in person, and how many times have you made public comment?
And the answer would be 0. I have not attended any, and obviously haven't spoken if I wasn't there. I will say that moving forward, it is my intention that if I am not elected, and we have such a fine group of people here, that I have every intention on being on one of the handful of boards that there are, so.
Thank you. Mr. McNeil.
Yes, I think I've been to 2, and I remember I fussed at one. We had a former assistant principal in our school system, John Andrews. He was tragically killed in the corner of 213, and I asked them if they would not at least create a park or donate something in his honor, and do something in his honor. I like when Smokey would tell you when he was on town council, if I had a question, I'd ask him. Tim McClyde, whoever it is. I like that personal attention. You can get one-on-one with commissioners, and same thing with some of the employees. Ask them the questions and they'll help you out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Ziegler.
Probably 5 or 6 in personal appearances, a few comments here and there. But I've watched the rest of them online, and still have the cell phone numbers of the other council members and the Queen Anne's County Commissioner's cell phone numbers. I'm waiting for a call back from Jack Wilson right now on fiber optics, so we'll share that later.
Okay. Mr. Worth.
Over the last 3 years, I've probably about 20 meetings, maybe. I don't know. I go to a lot of them. Usually when there's a particular issue involved, I get involved. Most of the time, I submit written comments. I maybe have testified maybe 3 times. So.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Beebaft.
3, I believe, and 2 of them were to be sworn into the Personnel Review Board. I did go to support people making public comments. I didn't make one myself, and I did, like Mr. Ziegler said, I watched the rest of them online, and I have talked to several councilmen face-to-face about different issues.
Thank you. Ms. Brown?
I have attended 3 to 4 town council meetings in person and have watched most of the QACTV streamed council or town hall meetings, and I have not made any public comments, but I have reached out to our council people via email with any questions that I did have in the interim.
Mr. Hardy?
Yes, I've been active very pretty much the last couple of years, 2 to 3 times. Each time I voiced my opinion. I'm very open about that. I also was an active member of the Parks Advisory Board. Shelby followed in my footsteps when I moved on. I was very pleased to be active in the Parks Advisory Board when Mr. Whitehill got Millstream Park renewed, the path, the wharf. I personally know Smokey over the years, worked with many other, and I interacted a lot with the county, and I think that's important. That's a missing link in our local government. We need to link the town with the county. We need to work together and move Centerville forward. I mean, we are in a prime spot. We are one of the only county seats that isn't a destination. I went around to all of them. We should be a destination. We should be bringing in revenue, tourists. We should be making jobs. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, the next public question, we're going to start with Steve Klein. And the question is, previously, because of the Maryland Open Meetings Act, council members were prohibited from meeting or discussing town business in private outside of the council sessions, closed sessions excluded. Now that we have a council of 5, how do the candidates plan to assure the citizens of the town that issues won't be discussed, negotiated, and decided upon before the council meetings, where citizens have the chance to voice their comments, and that the same transparency that previously existed continues, so the citizens wholly understand the reasoning behind each and every decision made by the council? And how do you define transparency in government? Mr. Klein.
Sure, that's a long question.
It is, sorry.
That's quite all right. No, so first off, I'll say there's nothing any one of us can say to guarantee, right, that we're not going to discuss issues outside of this, this meeting room. It's just a matter of integrity, right? And I think you have to look and decide for yourselves who you can trust to make that pledge and stick to it. I'll push back a little bit on the question and just say I think it's a good thing that the town council members can get together, even 2 of them, right, and have a cup of coffee and get to know one another and talk about things in a way that will build a rapport that I think will serve the town well, right? I think it doesn't always have to be an adversarial relationship. But transparency in government for me means you don't have to go to the meetings to find out what's happening. I think that's a profoundly unrealistic expectation of people with children and lives.
Thank you. Ms. Lane.
Yeah, and so to kind of piggyback off what Mr. Klein just said, that's, I think, what I said at my first introduction, is that so many of our residents, that because they are raising families at work, non-traditional hours, they aren't able to attend the meetings and some of the things that the community provides. So it is good that they can contact the members, and that the members can at least choose sit down. It does. It comes down to integrity, and I think it's part of Bob's.
B4I.
Thank you. And that's the way it should be. You can't prove something you haven't done, so it's kind of, you have to play by the rules, and it's that important.
Thank you. Mr. McNeil.
Thank you, Barbara. I sat in the chair where Jeff is now for 4 years as a member of the Board of Ed. It's a law. 2 Board of Ed members could not get together, or more than 2 Board of Ed members could not get together to discuss issues. It's a sunshine law. We want it to be fair. We want it to be open. As 5 of us get together, or 4 of us with the 1 incumbent, it's the law. You can't get together. 2 of you can get together, and that's simply the law, and that protects the government, protects you as a member of a council, and also protects the integrity of the office. Now, to your transparency question, real simple, communications. Tell people what is going on. Let's not have any backroom meetings. Let's not do things where people don't know what's going on. Communicate, communicate, communicate. You have to do a little better job than we're doing now. That way nobody can say, oh, I didn't know what happened. Okay? Let's tell them what's happening, make it clear.
Thank you. Mr. Ziegler.
One of the problems that we faced when you're on a three-person council, of course, you can't talk about it. And if any of you have seen my campaign signs, one of the words on there is integrity. I take that very seriously. With 5 on the council, you can at least cribbage a little bit before you go into the meetings. The biggest drawback right now is we can't release the minutes until they've been approved, and the minutes are not approved until the next council meeting. So it would be nice to have those minutes published right away. I don't know how many sessions I sat through where the only people there were the people on the council and the people who support staff. And we get that. And that was one of the reasons why we had 2 meetings. We just need people need to get involved, and they need to get interested. But we can do a better job of communicating. We just have to make sure it happens. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Worth.
I think the transparency of the government's not dependent on how many council members you have, but it depends on who is elected. I don't think having 5 or 3 is really going to change any of that if you end up voting the same type of people. I mean, I don't really think the government with 3 members was all that transparent, and I hope to improve that. And move forward with the Council of 5. I think there's some opportunities where we can hold small forums with 2 council members rather. Right now, I suppose 1 could meet with a group of citizens, and with 2, you could have with debates, you could have other forums to learn more about what citizens are really thinking.
Thank you. Mr. Beecraft.
Openness, honesty, and transparency are extremely important qualities at any level of government, and that strikes to communication. Everything needs to be communicated thoroughly, as already been stated. We need to use every opportunity we can to get the word out as to what's happening in the town and why. Also, along with that, integrity basically is something that you should expect from your elected officials. Integrity means playing by the rules. But I do agree that one of the big issues right now with a new council of 5, with 4 being totally new, is learning how to collaborate together. So there needs to be, I believe, some two-on-two meetings to develop some rapport. And I think that's in the best interest of the town. But again, openness, honesty, and transparency and communication.
Thank you. Ms. Brown.
So I think Mr. Klein and Mr. Beecraft both commented on the fact that we should, as Council of 5, get together maybe in groups of 2 to grow a rapport and get to know each other better. We are going to be working very closely to better our town, and meeting together will be important to build our relationships. And I think anyone who's going to be on this council, honesty and being trustworthy and integrity are the bare minimum of requirements. Are the bare minimum of requirements. And transparency in government needs to be via open communication. I think that Mr. Ziegler mentioning the minutes, they need to come out, before the next month. We need to know what's going on in real time. Open communication is of the utmost importance and will help with transparency in our government.
Thank you. Mr. Hardy.
Well, QACTV televises the county council meetings. Why not the town council meetings? I mean, real time. Who's afraid? I'm not. I think we need to do a better job. Social media, transparency. People need and want to know what's going on. We don't want to wake up and hear a 40% increase in our water bill. I plan on writing summaries of the meetings. In fact, at Symphony Village, monthly newsletter. My people who I live with, they're always asking what's going on. I have a Gmail account. I have a Facebook page. I'm going to be asking for thoughts, ideas, questions from the citizenships in real time. Why not? So I believe we can meet with the public I mean, the past council has come to Symphony Village. Why not go to Northbrook? Why not have a meeting, in East Centerville, West Centerville? That's what we're doing. We are the representatives of the people. So we should be transparent and have the highest integrity.
Thank you. Mr. Keel.
We live in a small town, so you might see two of us together. That doesn't necessarily mean we'll be talking politics. We could be just having a cup of coffee.
Orioles baseball, right, Fred?
Yeah, something, football. We could be doing anything. But like with everybody else that said, honesty and integrity and transparency are the three things that should be, if you want to be a councilman, that's what you should have.
Thank you. Okay, so the next question, and Ms. Lane, we'll start with you. What would you do to improve the relationship between the Centerville business community and town government?
Well, communication. It's becoming a little redundant. It's been said so many times, but yeah, that's the only way. Fred mentioned, how can a retired Board of Ed employee tell the businesses what they need to do? We're here to support them. It's I think symbiotic, is that what relationship, and so it boils down to communication.
Thank you. Mr. McNeil?
Yes, thank you. Ann's 100% right. It's communications. Whatever you believe, whoever or whatever made you, they gave you 2 ears and one mouth. Obviously, the priority was on listening. We've got to go to our existing business folks and listen to what their needs are, how we can help them, and how we can make this a better community. It's a very simple process. Listen, learn. A guy like Bo and his wife who run Doc's Restaurant and have 3 restaurants that are all successful knows a heck of a lot more about business probably than anybody on the town council. Listen to Bo. Edwards Pharmacy, we name all these businesses that do a great job. Listen, listen, listen.
Thank you. Mr. Ziegler?
Communications. Get the folks who are in the business to come to a meeting or do a round table, which we've tried to do and which we started off doing way back when, and then everybody stopped coming. And it's sad. The EEC group, the Economic Development Group, needs to do a better job, and that's why they're sitting in those seats. And they haven't been doing that. And I will fix that.
Thank you. Mr. Worth?
Well, I'll just repeat what the other candidates have mentioned. We need to communicate better with the businesses in town, understand their needs, and really listen to them. There are several forums available to do that, and I hope we can improve on those.
Thank you. And Mr. Beecraft?
Everything needs to be fair and equitable in dealing with the businesses. We also need to provide a safe environment for the businesses in town. I believe the infrastructure has got to be in place for the businesses to be able to prosper. And at the same time, we need to make sure that we have things like high-speed fiber optics in place that will attract businesses. So I think the big thing is being fair and equitable in our treatment with all of them.
Thank you. Ms. Brown?
So I think communication is obviously of the utmost importance here. I would like for all the councilmen and women to be able to go to the businesses and hear firsthand from the restaurant owners, real estate owners, any business owners in town, what they need. But also, we are an amazing, wonderful, small town, and it would be great for the relationships between the business owners and the candidates to be very welcoming so that they feel comfortable coming to us. And if that's via call, text, email, if they can't make it to a meeting, just so that they know there's an open line of communication at all times, they can express what they need and what they want for our town and not have any stress or concern or hesitancy in reaching out, because it's a welcome environment.
Thank you. Mr. Hardy?
Since I announced my candidacy, I have talked directly to all the businesses here in town. They are very disappointed in the past 10 to 15 years that they weren't listened to. End of discussion. That's what they said, all of them. I hope, and I've talked to them, we need to have like a business council where they come in and tell us what their needs are, what we can do to improve. In fact, Jack Ashley, I talked to him just this week. He really was disappointed. He schooled me on how bad he used to be able to talk to the council and they would listen and they work together. He says 10 to 15 years, zip, nothing, nada. And I talked to the Mattia brothers who are bringing in the fiber optic technology that Mr. Beecraft talked about. They told me I was the only candidate to even reach out to them and listen to what their concerns and the problems. The county already approved them. The town put roadblocks in their way. That's why we don't have it yet. And this has been since January.
Thank you. Mr. Keel?
I'm going to go back to our small towns. Go out, communicate. You can go in, visit the restaurants and the businesses. Go out and visit them. I go to all of them once or twice a week. Go in and talk to them and see what they, like I said, and see what they need. Biggest thing, like everybody else said, is communication. Talk to them.
Thank you. Mr. Klein?
So I think the first thing that the council members ought to do is frequent the businesses. Go get an ice cream. Clearly, I do that plenty. I wear a pair of sunglasses from Optical Galleria. Get my oil changes at Western Auto. Yeah, that's the first step, I think. The second step is don't expect them to come to the town council any more than we expect anybody else to come to the town council. We have to go to them, right? Meet them where they are. And the third thing, just building off what Mr. Beecraft said, is we have to make sure they're all treated equitably. I think, and I've reached out to Talkie as well and a number of other businesses. And the things that you hear are that there's a feeling that, some businesses are not treated equitably, that if the town doesn't like a business or a business owner, right, that comes through in the communication from the town. We can't be a part of any of that.
Thank you. Okay, so the next question changes the questions a little bit. And we're going to start with Mr. McNeil. What is Centerville's message in response to the Black Lives Matter movement?
You have this wonderful movement sweeping the world, not just the United States, that the way we behave as a society to certain members of our population, blacks in particular, it has to stop. You can't imagine being a young black man going out, waking up in the morning and taking your 2-mile jog, and the back of your mind is you can be shot. Now, I've run every morning my whole life, and I've never thought about that. Imagine if you're a young woman going to a store 10 o'clock at night to get some ice cream, and you're worried about being shot. I think it's a wonderful movement. I think it's a movement we should support as a town. I support as an individual. All lives matter, but at this particular time, our attention is to the fact that certain members of our population, the black community, the African American community, is not being treated fairly by certain segments of our society. There's no blame here. We're all to blame. We have to do something about it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Ziegler?
As a retired Marine Sergeant Major, served a tour or 3 in combat. In the Marines, there is no color. You're just green. We are all the same. We should all be judged by our character, our foresight, and the way we treat our fellow human beings. I believe strongly that all lives matter, no matter what the color of your skin is. It's how your character is that makes you who you are.
Thank you. Mr. Worth?
I'm not going to comment on what is clearly a partisan political issue. All right?
Okay, thank you. Mr. Beecraft?
Well, in piggybacking off what Mrs. Ziegler said, I believe, as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. stated, a man should be judged by the content of his character, not by the color of his skin. I think it's an issue. I've been an educator and worked with young people for 40 plus years. Racism is ugly in any form, and racism cannot be tolerated. All lives do matter. Right now, the highlight is on Black lives as an issue. Black lives obviously matter. I think anybody with any sense would say that. And I think as we move forward in Centerville, we have to incorporate all people as being equal.
Thank you. Ms. Brown?
I think the Black Lives Matter movement is an incredibly important movement that's happening in our country and the world right now. And I think what we can do to honor it and acknowledge it is to educate ourselves and educate ourselves about the best way that we can become a better town and be inclusive. And if that is in our businesses and our town events and what we sponsor as a town, to make sure that everyone feels inclusive, no matter who you are, what you are, we need to be welcoming to absolutely everyone, educate ourselves in the best way to do that, and honor everyone and make sure that we are appreciating everyone and honoring the Black Lives Matter movement.
Thank you. Mr. Hardy?
I echo what Mr. McNeil said. Our Constitution, our Declaration of Independence, our founding fathers have said there is equal justice before the law. All men are created equal. We are all human. We all bleed like George, my friend. When I was a major in the Army, we were all one team. And Black Lives Matter is bringing and highlighting, unfortunately, we're having deja vu of 50 years ago. I lived it, the 60s, the 70s. I hate living it again. We need to step up as a community, as a culture, and we need to respect diversity. This country is built on it. I look around this table, every single one of us, our forefathers, even some of us have come, we're immigrants. So respect it and celebrate it.
Thank you. Mr. Keel?
I look at it this way, we're all humans and we all should be treated the same. That's all I have to say about it.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Klein?
Sure, thanks. Racism has no quarter with me. I'll go on the record and say that. I think Black Lives Matter. I'll say that as well. And, you know, I look around and I've spent my life studying American history and American government, and you start to wonder, you see these things on the news and on social media, and you wonder what you can do about them. And Theodore Roosevelt said, you do what you can with what you've got where you are. And one of the things when I first announced my candidacy was, you know, clearly we have got to do a better job of making the town council more diverse, making town advisory boards more diverse, making town council meetings more diverse. We have a huge job to do, and it is going to take everybody to come to the table and make that difference. But we can be an example for the country. Some of these things seem too big to tackle, and the only way to tackle them is right here at home.
Thank you. Ms. Lane?
So in my bio, I had mentioned, and it was specifically about entertainment and recreation, but we're not a one-size-fits-all community. And this is the perfect, you know, time for that to be an example. We know that there are biases. I mean, they study that. Mr. Beecraft has a background in psychology, did you say? That small children have biases. And so having the tough conversations is what it's going to take to be aware and to move forward.
Thank you. Okay, next we start with Mr. Ziegler, and the question is, how would you try to reduce Centerville's carbon footprint during your term on the town council?
Most of our vehicles run lead-free gas. The equipment does. So that's already being done. Carbon footprint is how we put things back in the air, how we treat the air. And to my knowledge, Centerville's done a pretty good job moving forward on that. And I think we just need to make sure that we stay abreast of the rules and regulations in ensuring that we keep doing what we've been doing.
Thank you. Mr. Wirth?
I think it's more important that that individuals step up and do their best to reduce their carbon footprint. I do it by I have an electric vehicle rather than gasoline. I try to minimize the amount of grass that I have to cut to reduce emissions on my own property. And I think education is the key to get people to do the right thing.
Thank you. Mr. Beecraft?
I guess the answer would be to make sure we're in compliance with the EPA guidelines and everything as much as we possibly can be, and to encourage people as much as possible to commute by carpool or to walk by foot. Downtown area is a great time to get out and walk. But the big thing is just making sure everybody's in compliance with the EPA.
Thank you. Ms. Brown?
I think that we can take an opportunity as a town to have a campaign and have flyers and go to the businesses and educate all of the local citizens and businesses about how they can be better with their carbon footprint. And if it's going to the restaurants and talking about their takeout containers and putting signs up to promote people who live in the town to walk to their local restaurants, walk through the park if they want to go to a friend's house, walk to go get their ice cream, and just promote easy, accessible ways that we can decrease our carbon footprint while benefiting the town and getting to see our neighbors and see the beautiful historic district that we live in.
Thank you. Mr.
Well,
Hardy?
I agree. Centerville is doing a great job, I think. You walk around, in my community of Symphony Village, you go to Northbrook, you walk around the rest of the town, solar panels all over the place. And like Dan with his electric car. Well, I think another better way to reduce it is to bring jobs and business for our young people and our young families right here in Centerville. That way they don't have to commute into Baltimore, Annapolis, and DC. Environmental science is taught in our high schools. We have a plastic-free group on Queen Anne's County. They have established that straws. Get rid of the plastic straws. And we need to make the town more walkable. I went around to many towns on Eastern Shore. Their sidewalks are great. People can walk. And that's what makes them economically viable. They're bringing in money because people can walk around the towns, stop in the shops, go to Sugar Doodles, go to the creamery, go to the restaurants. That will reduce the carbon footprint in Centerville. Business.
Thank you. Mr. Keel?
There's another way we can do this is stormwater runoff is a big thing. There are certain things that you can do. You can put, they're called sand filters in. There's so many things out there now that you can get done to stop stormwater runoff. You think about all the cars that run up and down the streets. They're leaking, they could be leaking fluid. They could be leaking anything. Guess what? Rainstorm comes, wash it all in the storm drains. And where's it go? Into the waterways. So there are certain ways we can look at and prevent the stormwater runoff into the storm drains.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Good one.
So the issue is carbon footprint, which is, of course, emissions and sequestration. So I would say on the emissions front, we obviously have to make sure that we are powering the town with renewable sources to 100%, perhaps even beyond that, and selling that power back to the grid if possible. The other thing I would say is difficult to imagine reducing the carbon footprint if we slam Turpin Farm and the Carter Farm with houses. The third thing I'll mention is the town owns farms and may own more farms in the future for spray fields. You know, those are great places to invest in carbon mitigation. So you can imagine kind of actively manage forest, restoring wetlands on those farms that not only reduce the carbon footprint, they sequester carbon durably, so for a very long time. And if you can sell the carbon credits, they serve as a revenue source for the town. So it's a win all the way around.
Thank you. Ms. Lane?
So, a lot of great answers. And I can't help but wonder, this is so minuscule, but I know the town needs a new truck and a new plow, and I'm wondering how efficient the old truck is, and I would definitely be wanting to vote for the money in the budget for the new truck and plow.
Electric vehicles.
Based on on cutting down on the carbon.
Good, thank you. Mr. McNeil?
Barbara, I just scratched down a couple ideas. I think immediately the town council insisted any vehicle, cars or trucks they buy are electric. No choice, we go electric. They're available and it's not a big cost factor. I think any new house or new building that's built should include solar energy and other alternative energy sources. I think the town can tell the builders that's the way it's going to be, folks. Recycling, of course. They've taken, I know it's a county thing. I sit at the, Jeff can tell you, he sees me all the time. I sit at the town square every day and talk. They took away the trash can. What do you do with your trash, mate? Let's get recycling in a trash can. The last thing, I rode a bike up here tonight. Centerville is a great city for riding, a town for riding a bike. I ride from my house to Acme. I go anywhere except up the steep hills, all right? I've got a 3-wheel bike. People honk and say, look at that crazy old man riding that bike. But you know what? It's good exercise, it's fun, and this is a type of small town where we can easily adjust the bike traffic.
Thank you. Okay, the next question is kind of on the same track, and we're going to start with Dan Worth. Other neighboring towns have reduced the use of plastics, as in single-use plastic bags. Would you consider that an important step for our town environment?
Well, once again, I don't think we should force people to, or the businesses in town to go plastic free with the bags. I think once again it's an education issue, and if people would learn that paper bags are a much better approach, and actually they're kind of hard to find in the stores, at least try to make them available. That would be a start. I don't see us passing regulations to make that happen.
Thank you. Mr. Beecraft?
I think we need to try to educate people as much as possible about the use of plastics, and maybe encourage some of the stores to provide paper bags free and a small charge for plastic as a possible alternative. But I think it's an issue that's nationwide right now, so we need to be cognizant of it.
Thank you. Ms. Brown?
I think we definitely need to be cognizant of our use of plastics, and it would be wonderful if our local grocery stores promoted people to buy bags that we can reuse multiple times. And that's an opportunity for, fundraising for different local charities, or promoting different local businesses with their information on the bags, and getting into a routine of reusing water bottles, reusing bags go to the grocery store. When you go to get takeout, requesting not to use bags, not to use a straw, things like that. And if we put out flyers or posters or talk to our local businesses and educated people in the town and really push for it, I think that we could make a great impact with that.
Thank you.
I say, why not? Get rid of them if we can. Acme, Food Lion, they have reusable bags all over the place. They offer them. They encourage us to buy them, use them. And I like the idea that Shelby just said, advertise. Use them as a fundraiser for all the wonderful clubs. The 4-H clubs, we have, 7 of them in the county? Why not? We need to use that fundraising. Whole Foods gives a rebate if you have a reusable bag, like a nickel a bag. Our kids in our high school, I love them, substitute taught there the last 2 years. I don't think I saw a non-reusable bottle. All the kids had their bottles. They filled them up. Our schools had bottle water fountains so that they could fill their bottles. They weren't throwing plastic bottles around. So the kids got it. We got to get it. This is the adults. The kids are our future. Let them lead. Thank you.
Mr. Keel?
I'm all for getting rid of all plastic bags. The only problem I see with it is when you go to Food Lion and say, here, buy this bag. It's an extra expenditure. So somebody's got to buy the bag. So if you can offer them for free, that would be a better idea. Like, it's a business. Acme's in town, Centerville's in town. Maybe the council can say, all right, we're going to give you this much money to offer free grocery bags so you can eliminate the plastic bags.
Grant writing.
There you go, come to grant writing.
So I've worked in natural resources policy for 20 years. I hate plastic. I'll commit to saying that for sure. I think, we look around the streets and especially in the farm fields, we clearly have a litter problem. There's no question about that, but I sort of want to believe that it's, not our neighbors here in town that are the problem. Maybe it's folks just passing through. But I would say it's got to be educational in nature, but I also think you can make it competitive. We've got, perhaps some kind of an honor or award for Corsica River champions. If you've reduced your plastic bag usage as a business by 50%, you get a sticker from the town for your door, like a TripAdvisor or a Yelp sticker sort of thing. This place is not contributing plastic. So I'm all for it. A ban on plastic strikes me, as we sit here wonder how to bring businesses to town, strikes me maybe it's not the wisest thing in the world to do right now.
Thank you. Ms. Lane?
Clearly, there's room for improvement, but I think overall we do a pretty good job. And I think in the past we have had litter pickups and community days to clean certain parks and areas, and when we're completely out of the pandemic, maybe we can get back to that sort of thing.
Why not?
And again, I think that it's a step in the right direction. I am a little leery of doing away with plastic as a first step. If we can get the word out and communicate first, I'd rather see that moving forward.
Mr. McNeil?
Yes, Barbara, the whole world, Steve knows better than I do, is awakened to the fact that plastics are a danger to the planet, not only to human beings, but to animals. We have miles of our ocean being dominated by plastic waste that just floats. Here's what we've got to do. You take the town commissioners, go up to Acme. Donna Barton is the manager of Acme. She used to be Donna Ford. I taught her 9th grade science. She's a great student. Donna, help us work with you so we can get rid of plastic. Now, she runs a business. We listen to her. Donna, tell us what we can do that we can phase plastics out in 3 months, 6 months, whatever it might take. We'll help you. Plastics have to go. The whole planet knows they have to go. If we don't do something now, we threaten our children and our grandchildren's future. And like I said, Steve can speak to this more eloquently than I can. But if Chestertown can do it, by golly, Centerville can do it. Bob Thompson used to live down the street here, used to say, it's easier, Fred, to turn around a little ship than a big ship. We're a little ship. Let's get rid of plastics.
Thank you. Mr. Ziegler?
I was in Acme today, and I didn't think about it, and I got my groceries, started walking away, and the lady behind me walked up and said, can I have paper? And the lady said, of course. And I sat there for a minute and I went, you dummy? Why didn't you ask that? Because when I go to Chestertown, I always get paper at the Acme and just didn't think about it. So I think maybe instead of going to the business, why don't we go to our customers? I'm an old Procter & Gamble business development manager. The customers drive the business. So why don't we go to our customers, our residents, and get a push on from that end? And then they will start listening on the retail end.
Thank you. So meantime, we have been getting a few questions from Facebook. And one of them, Pat just showed me, is, and I think we can do this with a raise of hands. How many of you use reusable bags when you go shopping? Okay.
31, great deal.
Does anybody have anything they want to say about it?
Yeah.
Oh, Bob?
I think they're available. You just have to make like Smokey just said, ask for them. Or in my car, they're right there. I just pick them up, go in, and use them. And it gets back to what you were saying. We have to educate the customer. If the customer tells the business, we want to get rid of plastic, here's my reusable bag. Do you have paper? We have to have maybe a campaign. Why not? Why not? The town can be at the forefront of leading it. okay? And like Fred says, Chestertown's done it. Hello? Why not us? Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McNeil?
You know, I had the pleasure, I taught in Australia for 2 years. There was no such thing as a plastic bag. You either got it wrapped up in paper or a newspaper, and they were taught that's the way you shop and that's the way you bring your produce, wherever it is, home. Look, I know Donna Ford, and if she doesn't help us out, I'm going to go back and change her grades if she fails. But no, Donna is a smart person. Acme are smart people. They know this is changing our planet and our state and our communities. Plastic has to go. Donna, work with us. Smokey, you're right. Smokey and Fred have to walk up with their little canvas bag to make it easier for them, but a cooperative effort, and it's real simple. Do we want to have our grandchildren be able to live on this planet or not? Plastic's one of the things that has to go. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Beecraft.
As mundane as it might sound, this is a tremendous environmental issue. And it's one that needs to be addressed. We can do it through education. We have campaigns for other things like Queen Anne Goes Purple. Why not Queen Anne Goes Reusable? Some kind of campaign that would educate people as to the needs behind it instead of just trusting people to figure it out on their own. I also agree with Fred. I think that we need to work with the businesses and see how we can help them to come up with a solution.
I have one more thought, and I think it might be seconded by everybody. We live on the Chesapeake Bay, okay? We don't need to worry about the ocean. We need to worry about the bay. Our fishermen, our crabbers, oystermen, that's their living. I like fresh oysters. I love crab. I challenge anybody here that doesn't like crabs. Well, you don't like crabs? You're a crab. No.
I don't like it.
I'm just saying, it is an economic, okay? If our bay is healthy, it'll bring back oysters. It will bring back rockfish if it can come back. It's economics, okay? It is our neighbors who are making a living. There are many families in this county, in the shore. They're watermen for generations.
Okay.
Excuse me. The Chesapeake Bay screams at me.
Are we allowed to follow up? Bob, I'll do it real quick. And Smokey had his hand up too.
Okay.
You know, I have 2 kayaks. I drive them, I take them down. You don't have to go to the bay. Bob, you're right about the bay, obviously.
Yeah.
Corsica River. I paddle those kayaks from my house, or the landing in Centerville, up to Gunson. It takes me half an hour up, half an hour back. There's plastic bottles and stuff floating. I walk every morning from my house out to Watson Road. Every morning, there's plastic and stuff thrown away. The town has to do simple things. First of all, put more recycling, make it easy. You know, Americans, we're lazy. Hey, if I just have to walk 10 paces, I'll probably put it away. If I have to walk 11, I'll probably throw it on the ground. Do some smart things, working with the business, Smokey, individual responsibility. But let's make it easy.
Okay.
All right.
Mr. Ziegler, you had something to add?
Just, I don't want to sound negative on this, but I've been down this road with putting out trash cans and recycling cans. In a perfect world, it'd be a great idea and it would work. But unfortunately, we don't live in a perfect world. And we will find household trash piled up in and around that, which has happened in the past and which is why we don't have those now. In a perfect world, what a great idea, and I'm all for it. But we always have that 10% that we have to deal with and communicate with and make them do better. And when we do, then let's make it happen.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. Another great question has come in from Facebook. And this is Mr. Beecraft, you're up. You'll be the first one here. What do you feel about workforce housing as part of your growth?
Repeat that one more time.
What do you feel about workforce housing as part of your growth?
I think in a smart growth principle, there's got to be a planned out housing aspect where you've got 3 layers of housing. You've got and certainly workforce labor housing would be appropriate, low-income housing, subsidized housing, or at least affordable housing, maybe is a better way of putting it. But I think it's got to be in a design. That goes with your plan for growth, how you design your community.
Thank you. Ms. Brown?
So I agree with Mr. Beecraft. I think that it's important to have all different levels of housing, but we need to make sure we do it in a educational way, or in a way that is, make sure that we are educated in the best way to do that for the growth of the town, so that we are making sure that the housing that we do already have in town is being utilized, and that when we start growing and adding more housing, that we are making sure what we currently have is being utilized, and then creating economic development plans to make sure that our growth is planned out in a smart way.
Thank you. Mr. Hardy?
Workforce housing. What is the most important workforce in our town and our county?
Teachers, dude.
Thank you. Teachers, first responders, your police, your firemen, your law enforcement, people like Jeff. No, he's first responder, okay? I love him. Without him, Symphony Village would worry. But we need workforce housing. I think Smokey said housing prices are going up. Are our teachers going to afford it? No. But I think that it's shown already in the county, in Graysonville and in Chester, they have multi-level housing available. We need to have workforce housing, and that gets back to us in town to work with the county to make that available so we can attract and keep our young people here in town, in the county, and loving the wonderful family environment. Thank you.
Mr. Keel?
Well, I do believe we do have two income-based developments in the town of Centerville right now, Bradley Drive and Center Park. The next thing is, when developers come in and want to build, you make them, they're called moderately priced dwelling units. So if they're going to build 200 houses, 20 or a percentage of them should be moderately priced dwelling units, where like first responders and teachers and whoever can buy those moderately priced dwelling units. They do it in the county now. I think when they build a big development, they have to have a certain percent of them have to be moderately priced dwelling units.
Yep.
Thank you. Mr. Klein?
Sure. So as I said earlier, I'm not sure where you would put it right now. There are two farms, Turpin Farm and Carter Farm, which I think there are some questions about development on in the future. But I am for meeting the needs of the housing market. And I think that's, you've got to work with the developers. I don't think it is the role of the town council to say, we need another apartment complex. Let's go find a place to put it and a company to build it. That's up to landowners, developers, and the zoning rules of the town. And it gets to that equity issue for landowners and developers. You know, I consider, my wife stays at home. She teaches 2 kids, thankfully. And, you know, we're in a moderately priced dwelling. So, I want to see houses built and properties redeveloped that bring families to town and keep them around.
Good, thank you.
I
Ms. Lane?
don't have anything to add. I think it's been.
Thank you. Mr. McNeil?
People need a place to live, whether they buy it or rent it, and the town can help create an atmosphere where people are encouraged, all right, as they develop places, to do what Jeff said is moderate relief price housing. You know, they're getting ready to develop right now, their fingers are crossed anyway, Judge Carter's house. Beautiful acreage right there. There's going to be some beautiful, one of the plans is beautiful waterfront houses, condo type thing, townhouses, yada, yada, yada. This is various plans that didn't go through, but they're proposing. We have to insist as a town council, you know, a certain percentage of that, all right, is people who need help. It does make no sense that someone who teaches at Queen Anne's County High School lives in Caroline County. Makes no sense that an EMS person who's working in this city, in this county, has to live in Caroline County. We have a couple rental properties in McNeil's, and my wife's in real estate besides teaching, and she'll tell you, Fred, this town needs affordable housing and affordable rental units.
Thank you. Mr. Ziegler, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, this is near and dear to my heart. I'm a child of the projects, boys and girls. I know what they're like. I know what they do to the community. We had a company come in and want to build a structure out next to the Acme where there is a new structure there. And they wanted to build workforce housing, which I applauded. But I asked the developer one question: how are you going to pay this forward? For every 350 people that come to any municipality, it's one more police officer that's required. In addition to a public works agreement, and I hope everybody here knows what a public works agreement is. It's an agreement between you and the developer. Well, I added a caveat called a DRRA, Developers' Rights and Responsibilities Agreement. And I laid out what was going to be required of this individual to build this building here. He walked away from the project. And that's my feeling about that. It costs money. I'm all for it. I think they should be here.
Thank you. Mr. Worth.
Let's see, I also agree that we should have moderately priced housing in town, workforce housing. But it should not be off near the jail or wherever. It should be integrated within the town. And if you look at how the older part of town is, that's the way it is. I mean, right across from me, I have a duplex owned by the county that's rented out to low-income residents. Around the corner, there's houses. They're being refurbished, repaired. There are apartments nearby. There's a good mix of housing, and I think new developments should be the same. I mean, new developments should reflect the town of Centerville, the old part of town of Centerville, and have a mix of housing.
Thank you. Okay, let's look at the other. Are there some more questions that have come in over the Facebook? What are your plans to get the town out of debt? Ms. Brown, I think you're up for that.
Yes. So my plans to get the town out of debt, that is a large project. We have a lot of debt on our hands. I will need the help of my, hopefully, 4 other candidates or town councilmen and women. I think that we all need to get together, talk to our local businesses, look over our budget, think about how we can work on our capital, and meld our minds and make a financially, fiscally responsible budget moving forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Hardy.
Yes, in the last, I'll say I've been here 12 years, and the town has bought a lot of properties, taking them off the tax rolls, okay? What good is that, okay? Those properties do not generate real estate taxes. In fact, one of them was bought for 50% over appraised value, okay? So we have properties that I would seriously want to look at. I mean, I've talked to Steve, I've heard Steve mention about that we need to look at. Why are we in the commercial property buying mode, okay? We need to have owners develop it. Get it on the tax rolls. Have them pay taxes, Thank you.
Mr. Keel.
First of all, we need to find ways to bring more revenue into the town. The second thing is you have wants and needs. So you have to go, we need this, but we want this. So you have to, you got to fill your needs first, and then you go to your wants.
Thank you. Mr. Klein.
Just like at home, right, the first thing you got to do is stop adding more debt. And that would be the first point I guess I would make. The second point is, you've got to basically spend everything you can to get that number down. I don't think there is a magic revenue silver bullet that's going to play out that allows you to do it more rapidly than otherwise. But essentially, everything has to be pointed towards managing that debt. If you don't manage the debt, it will manage you. And I think the higher that number gets, the more it's limits what we want to do. And we've heard a lot of ideas tonight about things people want to do for the town. Some of those things take money. And so we have to manage that debt. And I just think bearing down on it, making sure we're not adding more, and using our facilities, our resources, I should say, revenues, to get that number down over time. I don't think there is a silver bullet that solves this problem.
Thank you. Ms. Lane?
And it's going to take time. I mean, we didn't get this debt overnight, and we're not going to get rid of it overnight. It's going to take, the members being in agreement and chipping away at it over the next probably decade or more.
Mr. McNeil?
I worked for the Board of Ed for 30 years, and the superintendent was a guy named Bernie Sadusky. And he said, Fred, you always need a 1, a 5, and a 10-year plan for your personal life and your business life. And the town has to do that as it deals with the debt. We are a county seat in a county that is going to grow, okay? When I first moved here 41 years ago, there was no Symphony Village. There was no Northbrook. They've added terrific talent to this town. We're going to have to grow. We need planned growth to bring in some revenue, okay? We're going to have to look at residential housing. We're going to have to look at businesses to attract, to help us increase the amount of revenues we have as a town. Steve is right, and everyone else, this is not going to be done overnight, but you need, hey, where do we want to be a year from now on the debt? Where do we want to be 5 years from now? Where do we want to be 10 years from now? And let's stay on that course. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ziegler?
Would you read the question one more time for me?
I will. What are your plans to get the town out of debt?
My first year on the council, within 3 months of being sworn in, I formed a budget advisory committee made up of individuals who live in Symphony Village, retired financial experts, 5 of them. Yep. We tore the budget apart, put the budget back together, looked at all the investments, and we started moving that forward. It's funny, when I left the council, they disbanded the committee. One of the first things I would do would be bring that committee back.
Thank you. Mr. Worth?
Yeah, as many have said already, we just need to chip away at it, and the way to do that is to not take any more debt on, and also to look at the expenses of the town and try to reduce that, so we don't have to increase taxes to pay for increasing debt, and also to if we leave everything alone, that's what I think will happen. So just need to take a hard look at expenses.
Thank you. And Mr. Beecraft?
It doesn't take a great economist to realize that to lower the debt, you've got to take in more than you spend. That's going to require great analysis of the budget, making sure that there's no fat in the budget. There are other things we can do, like Fred talked about. Smart growth is one way of doing it. There is another possibility of generating revenue. There are several options that are available. One is taking part of the tax set off and putting it into the debt. That would have to be negotiable by the townspeople. But that's a possibility that certainly could be utilized.
Thank you.
Hello.
Okay, and do we have any other questions?
The only one is this one above.
One more question.
Yeah, okay, well, let's start. That was.
We have time
Shelby,
for
you
one more
started the
question?
last one, right?
One more question?
We have maybe
Okay.
2 more.
Oh, 2 more, good.
You've been doing really great, thank you. Keeping to the minute. Another one that has come in from Facebook is, what would you have done differently on the roads project? Mr. Hardy.
Well, first, I would have told the public, the taxpayers, the true cost. They said 4 million. It went up to 8 million. Then they CYA'd and said, oh, our estimate all along was 8 million. Also, Smokey mentioned about the experts that he brought in for finance. Well, in this town, in Symphony Village, and I bet you in Northbrook and all around, we have people that can bring expertise to the town, okay? In fact, one of the secretaries on the Planning and Zoning Commissioner, that's her job, professionally. They weren't sought. They weren't listened to. There is, as an engineer, I know there's technology that they could have found out what was underneath the ground. It's called ultrasonic testing. They could have found out the nature of the road, okay? They didn't do any of it. And I'll just say I'm disappointed. They didn't lead, and they, whatever. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Keel.
The cost of the project, I understand, was $4 million, but there was also a lot of unknowns. Just like Mr. Hardy said, they didn't know what was in the ground. They couldn't tell you what was in the ground because the gentlemen that were working for the town, they're gone, so they can't tell you, nobody can tell you what's in the ground. So I can tell you for a fact that there was a lot of unknowns in there because I was out on the job. I saw the job. And if you saw what the contractor had to go through, you would understand why he did a time and material job. I didn't really look at the price per unit for anything, so I couldn't tell you what that was. But I can tell you there was a lot of unknowns, and we need to start looking, like Mr. Hardy said, the next projects, we need to look hard at the projects before we even start them to see how much it's going to cost and stick to the budget.
Thank you. Mr. Klein.
I don't know anything about roads or building roads, but I do know that anything that's new all at one time is going to be old all at one time. And when you don't keep up with maintenance, it's like anything else on your house. If you keep putting off investments and maintenance and projects until some other time, then they wind up snowballing the way that this project seems to have snowballed. And so I think to Mr. McNeil's point, we've got to have an infrastructure plan to avoid these types of major projects to the extent that we can, because we're addressing these things in real time as they come up. I think when you save projects, some other town council board can handle these things some other day. Some other taxpayer, some other group of taxpayers can handle these problems 10 or 15 years from now. That's passing the buck. That's irresponsible for today's citizens and tomorrow's residents as well. That's what I would do differently.
Thank you. Ms. Lane.
It was a costly lesson, wasn't it? And we know moving forward what we are going to have to do by having the appropriate people communicate. And I think the rest of the candidates have touched on the things that need to happen. There were the unknown variables, as Jeff pointed out, and Steve made some great points. So good lesson, expensive one.
Thank you. Mr. McNeil.
One of the biggest problems we face as a nation and as a state, and we obviously found that in the town, is our road infrastructure, our bridges, our roads, our schools, et cetera, et cetera. We haven't been doing the preventive maintenance and keeping up in maintenance. And I'm not so tough on the town. They didn't, I think Jeff knows more about this, once they didn't realize what was there. Our infrastructure was so old, we had incomplete maps, we just didn't know what was there. And as they got in there, it got a mess. I think I would fault the town for one thing. Again, what's our favorite C word tonight? Communications. The public didn't know what was going on. I didn't know what was going on. I mean, I bugged different people. And nobody's fault. But tell us, folks, we have a problem. All of a sudden, we're finding pipes and things like this that are corroding, and it's going to cost us more money. And we're going to run into other problems. Keep communicating, and we didn't do a good job with it. And that's why people were ticked off about the roads going in this direction, or the road traffic problem, and I'm going to stop like the roads did for about 3 or 4 months. Okay?
Mr. Ziegler.
I was on the council when the state came to us and said, we're going to do a mill and overlay on 213 going through town. We went, oh, okay. Well, then we better think about what we're going to do. And to heart, I watched them do Broadway. Broadway's pipes went back to the 60s. We found sewer pipes that drained into the street that nobody knew anything about. We found gas tanks that nobody knew anything about. We had pipes that had 7 bands on it, which is fixes, just on Broadway, the shortest street in town. And I knew that South Liberty was going to be a nightmare because I knew that it had clay pipes down there, and it was a nightmare. The other thing what a lot of people don't remember is that was probably one of the wettest seasons that we've ever had down there, and everything flows that way. So it just got exacerbated the whole way through the whole project, and we ended up where we were because of that. And it's sad. We can do better.
Thank you. Mr. Worth?
Yeah, I think we should have spent a little time and money on engineering studies. We did that for the Kidwell project, and that one came in very close to budget. We didn't do any of that. I think the town just proceeded with a wild guess on what it would cost to do Commerce and Liberty. And I also think they should have involved the businesses better in the planning. They were excluded, and they were probably the most impacted by this project and suffered the most through it. I'm glad they all made it through, only to be hit by the COVID stuff. But I admire that they've been able to survive that. But they should have been included in the conversation, and they were just told at the last minute what was going to happen.
Thank you.
We all have 20/20 hindsight. And the truth of the matter is, there's nothing any of us could have done to prevent the overage. The problem was the planning that didn't take place the years prior. For infrastructure projects that are old, they're going to need to be replaced at some time, but not all at once. So planning, as Fred's pointed out, 5-year, 10-year plans to replace infrastructure would be more beneficial than trying to do a major large overlay at one time. But there's nothing any of us could have done at the time to have lowered the cost.
Thank you. Ms. Brown?
I'm sorry.
So obviously, I hope that we have learned from what happened with the roads. And I think that, like Fred said, communication is key. Living here, I think that a lot was happening, and we thought it was going to be one number, and then you keep hearing different changes, and you don't hear the information if you don't go to a town council meeting. So I think that communication regarding what's going on with town projects is of the utmost importance. And I think maybe being honest and just being honest with and being transparent that, there are variables that we may not be aware of that could affect the final bottom line of this project. And being honest about that from the beginning might help soften any changes that happen that we can't plan for, but also making sure that we put all of our efforts in hiring and getting teams together to make sure that we are going through every single avenue that we can to plan the best we can for all of our projects so that we don't have scary numbers coming up with things that we weren't expecting. As much planning as you can do is going to have the best end result.
Thank you. So I think, let's make that the last question. I think you've all done a great job, as I said, keeping to your 1 minute. And now let's go into your candidate closing statements, and it's kind of a free-for-all. You can do whatever you want. But we're going to start with Dan Worth, and we're going to go in reverse order. So Mr. Beecraft, you will be the last, and Mr. Worth, if you would like to start.
Okay.
Still 1 minute.
Being at the bottom of the alphabet rarely gives me an opportunity to be first at anything. I sat in the back of the class, usually last in line, and in this case, I'm at the bottom of the ballot. So I'm just going to ask you, when comes time to vote, to save one of your votes for me at the bottom of the ballot. And I want to thank the League of Women Voters and the Queen Anne's County Television for putting on this forum.
Mr. Ziegler.
I'm going to just blow my own horn for one thing, and that's tax offset. We didn't have one before I got on the council. You're at about 12 cents right now. I'm going to work hard to get it to the 17, 18, or 19 cents it should be right now. Everybody got your county tax form in July. I go back and look at it. There's a line on there that says rebate. That's the money that went back to the citizens. I want that money to go back to the citizens because the way the market is today, it needs to go back to the folks who paid the taxes. How many of you know that we have a solar array at the spray irrigation field? You're welcome.
It's okay. You did something.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
For your support, for putting on this forum. Thanks to you all for getting the guts up and showing up for this tonight, and good luck to each and every one of you.
Mr. McNeil.
If I can, Barbara, I'm going to take my minute and speak to the audience. I want to encourage everybody to vote. 2020 is an exceptional year. On the town election, we've got 9, if you've heard them tonight, 9 wonderful people running for office. There's a lot of great ideas. It's silly we only have 500 or 600 people voting. Look, if you're watching this show, you're going to vote. You're probably a politics geek, or you just, I don't know, you're in love with Bob Hardy or something. I don't know. Whatever it might be.
Thank you.
We're about to go from 3 commissioners to 5. It's going to be an exciting time. Take your time. I did early voting last week. It probably took me all of 5 minutes. This Sunday, you can early vote from 12 to 3, okay? They give you an envelope, you do your mark or marks, you put it back in the envelope, you're done. And then, of course, you can vote October 5th. But please, do the town a favor this year. Get involved. We need more than 500 or 600 people. Let's get as many people as we can, and I will stop. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Lane.
I just want to thank you all for putting this together tonight. And yeah, please vote. So you've got some great folks here. You can't go wrong.
That's it. Thank you. Mr. Klein.
Well, thanks again to QACTV. Happy birthday to the League of Women Voters. That's great to hear, 100 years. It's refreshing to see this much interest in the town council election. I think I was the first one to officially file. I think that's true. And I didn't expect to be here tonight with 8 other people, but I'm excited that I am. So I just ask folks to look into the candidates, vote. I certainly agree with Fred's recommendation there as well. And I think there are candidates here that are prepared to do a great job. I think there might be 9 of them up here. So really it comes down to who you think is going to take this job seriously and professionally. And I hope that I can earn your vote. And thanks again.
Thank you. Mr. Keel.
I want the town council to be more transparent and communicate more. As taxpayers, we need to know where our money's going to be spent. I hope to represent the residents of Centerville. I want to be their voice. Given an opportunity, I will carry out this mission to the best of my ability. As a volunteer with Google Fire Company, I've met many town residents, good people to step up when they need it, whether it's a local family needing assistance, a lost pet, a coaching team. I care about the town I live in and want to be involved. And one last thing, I want to be a part of the solution, not the problem.
Thank you. Mr. Hardy.
I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters, QACTV, for letting us reach out to the voters of the Centerville. I appreciate the support and encouragement the citizens have given me. I wish to dutifully serve all the people of Centerville. I am, I think, a successful, professional, innovative individual. I will maintain the family-oriented nature of our community. I will support and encourage our business community to flourish. I will make historical Centerville a destination with all the ensuing benefits to our quality of life and economy. So I am going to listen, learn, and serve this community. We are in this together. Again, I will say I am a P4I individual, professional, personable, proactive, with integrity, and I'm asking for your vote for Bob Hardy for Centerville. You can contact me, friendsofbobhardy@gmail.com, Friends of Bob Hardy Facebook page. Please give me your thoughts, comments, and questions. We need to work together. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Brown.
I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters and Queen Anne's County TV for putting this all together. And I would like to just say that I love Centerville, and I would be honored to be able to put my background and my passion of event planning and grant writing into making our town even greater than it is. I'd be honored to earn your vote and to be able to be a part of this historic time in Centerville, Town Council of 5. It would just you know, it would be a dream come true, and I'd be honored if you vote Shelby Brown for town council.
Thank you. Mr. Beecraft.
Well, again, thank you for everybody for putting this on. It's a privilege to be considered to be a part of this. One thing I would say is that this is not just a privilege, it's a job. And I have the time to put into spending to research the issues, to come up with decisions that need to be made. So it is a job that's going to require time. Also, I am a big proponent of transparency in government, and I pledge to be transparent, open, honest, and transparent. At the same time, I encourage everyone to get involved and stay involved, not just at election time, but throughout the course of the time, to stay involved as citizens of Centerville. Again, I would say that my lifetime motto is nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. I care very deeply for Centerville and its people, and I ask for your vote.
Thank you. So that concludes our questions and your comments. I would like to give a big thank you to our outstanding citizens of Centerville who have sent their questions in and taken part and made this forum possible. Also, thank you all candidates. Good luck to all of you. You're all great. And a special thank you to Queen Anne's County TV for making possible the virtual forum, which is a first for us. I think a first for all of us. So thank you very much and good night.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, thank you.